This is USVI News, your Virgin Islands connection.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for USVI News. I'm Emily Matson. Virgin Islands Governor Albert Bryant Jr. has submitted a proposal to the VI legislature to increase the retroactive pay to government employees from $25 million to $40 million. It's a big step to get current on this long-owed debt. The governor said updated revenue forecasts enabled him to increase the amount of money available to repay the long-awaited wages, decreasing the government's obligation of $175 million now to $135 million.
In my State of the Territory address earlier this year, I committed to calling for the appropriation of at least $25 million each and every single year to address the retroactive wages owed to the government employees for over 30 years now. On July 12th, I submitted legislation to the 34th legislature to effectuate the first such payment. After a joint review of our projected revenues and expenditures, I believe that we have the wherewithal to make a larger initial payment. There are still pressing obligations in our community that need to be met. But the pressures of inflation are being borne disproportionately by our residents living on fixed income. So this opportunity and every single opportunity I have to do a little bit for us seniors who cannot go back out to work, who cannot just pick up and say they're going to take on another job. Those are the people that are feeling this increase in inflation the most. So we're going to take this opportunity to pay as much back wages as we can to those workers who are retired or near retirement. We, as an administration, are dedicated to seeing it through and ensuring that we pay back the money owed to the people. And we feel good and confident that we can do this at a time when people are most stressed by the price of food, gas, energy on a whole, and just the cost of living around the globe.
And that now goes to the VI legislature, where it does have much support. The $40 million will allow the government to fulfill payments to 6,000 retired and active government employees. And as inflation rates soar, some relief may soon be on the way for senior citizens. Starting next year, Social Security checks are expected to increase by up to $159 a month. The Social Security Administration's annual cost of living adjustment is based off of July, August, and September's inflation reports. Analysts project an adjustment of more than 9%, making it the biggest boost to Social Security benefits since 1981. The Social Security Administration is expecting to make their final announcement in October after September's Consumer Price Index data is released. The wife of a USVI businessman and her acquaintance have been convicted of his murder, which happened more than 17 years ago. VI Attorney General Denise George says a jury found Vivienne Jacques and Cajuste Stewart guilty of murder for the June 25, 2005 stabbing death of 63-year-old Egbert Stewart. Egbert Stewart was the owner of Mano's West Indian restaurant on St. Thomas. He was found in a pool of blood inside the bedroom of his condo with multiple stab wounds and a large kitchen knife impaled in his neck. Ms. Stewart at the time told police she arrived home to find him dead, but new forensic evidence led cold case investigators to reopen the case back in 2015. And after a 10-day trial, last week a jury found both defendants guilty of first-degree murder, a conviction that carries a mandatory life sentence in prison without the possibility of parole. Millions of people swear by the vitamin and mineral bottles lining the aisles of their pharmacies, groceries, and health food stores. But are there any benefits to taking them, or are you wasting your money? A new report may have you thinking twice. Vicki Nien has more.
Americans love their supplements. Taken by 31% of adults in the U.S., a whopping 80 million people, these pills, powders, and liquids are part of a $50 billion industry domestically. But are you getting your money's worth? The U.S. Preventive Services Task Force, which is a non-government independent panel of evidence-based medicine experts, reviewed 84 studies involving hundreds of thousands of people over 30 years. The task force concluded there was little or no benefit in using vitamin and mineral supplements to prevent cancer, cardiovascular disease, and death.
You really don't need to take them.
Dr. Peter Cohen studies the safety of supplements at Harvard Medical School. He believes they do have an important place in medicine, like for people with certain digestive diseases, following specific restrictive diets, or on medications that interfere with nutrient absorption. But he says they're not for everyone.
I'm a big fan of multivitamins, but it's when patients really need them. For most healthy people, there's just no reason to take these every day.
Not everyone agrees with the task force's findings.
There are narrow, specific recommendations for healthcare providers.
Andrea Wong, a PhD researcher, leads scientific and regulatory affairs for the Council for Responsible Nutrition, a trade group that represents more than 180 manufacturers and suppliers of dietary supplements. Though studies are limited, she says there's growing evidence multivitamins can be beneficial.
Multivitamin use can reduce the risk of cataracts. There's also recent research showing that multivitamin use can reduce the risk of cognitive decline.
According to Wong, supplements can also fill critical nutritional gaps in a person's diet.
People can really benefit from getting their nutrients, and unfortunately, so many of us aren't getting enough.
Still, Dr. Cohen says save your money if you're healthy and eating a fairly balanced diet. Do you think supplements are a waste of money?
I do.
When your patients come to you and say, I would really like to take a multivitamin or a mineral supplement, what's your advice?
And I'd rather them spend that extra amount of money on healthier food.
Despite their differences, both experts can agree a multivitamin isn't a shortcut to good health.
I would think twice about taking the multivitamin because honestly, it's not going to replace fruits and vegetables.
It's important to do the other hard work, getting a good night's sleep, getting your exercise, trying to eat as best as you can, and going to see your healthcare provider. It's one part of that puzzle. It's not meant to be the only solution.
You can't just eat hot Cheetos, take a vitamin, and call it a day.
I wish we could, but nothing in life is that simple, is it?
If only it was. From health news to consumer news now, American Airlines is making what they're calling proactive adjustments to their flight schedule. On Monday, an aviation analytics company said the airline will slash 31,000 flights in November. In a statement, American Airlines says the cuts are, quote, in line with our approach to network and schedule planning throughout the year, end quote. Chicago O'Hare and Dallas-Fort Worth will feel the cuts the most, as will Boston and Philadelphia. Just last week, the airline says it was cutting 2% of its September and October schedule. American Airlines isn't the only airline making changes. Both United and Delta have made similar cuts. Staffing shortages, weather, and air traffic control delays have caused many airlines to struggle with flight cancellations and delays all through this busy summer travel season. The Labor Department recently released Consumer Price Index signaled inflation may have peaked. And that's good news for airline travelers. While fares are still higher than in 2019 right now, a decline in fuel prices could make one last summer getaway a bit cheaper. Chris Van Cleve reports.
Falling fares down nearly 8% in July.
I feel like it went up, but now it's going back to like normal prices.
I know how high they can be, so when I find a reasonable flight, I jump on it immediately.
Some big savings on flights to San Diego, now $230 cheaper on average than the May peak. Hawaii is down $154. Even flights to Prague could cost you about $300 less.
Prices about a month ago were ridiculously high.
To find a deal, Renanda Young and her mom took a ridiculous detour, driving more than 100 miles to save nearly $400. They flew from Eugene, Oregon to Burbank, California instead of Portland to Los Angeles. It still cost her double from last year.
They were close to reasonable. At that time, they were $400 for the two of us for round trip, just over.
Airline ticket prices peaked in May as pent-up pandemic demand filled planes and fuel prices soared.
What's the sweet spot if you're looking for a deal?
If you're looking for a deal on airfare, now is the sweet spot.
Haley Berg tracks airfare for travel site Hopper. She says right now, round-trip domestic tickets for September and October will cost travelers on average $238, down roughly 37% from May. But she expects they will again top $300 by November and rise steadily as people book for the holidays.
Though prices have fallen from the peak earlier this summer, well over $400, they are still relatively high. Prices will probably drop a little bit between now and the middle of October. You will want to book your holiday travel by that second week of October.
Renata Young is already bargain hunting for her next getaway.
With the prices coming down on airline tickets, I'm actually anticipating us traveling some more in the next year than what I had initially planned for our travel budget.